Welcome back to another video on the channel. Wimbledon is back after what felt like a very long year without it last year. Obviously didn't go ahead due to the coronavirus pandemic, but it's back bigger than ever this year with Roger Federer, crowds, Andy Murray. And before I get into today's video, I will also be bringing out a full women's tournament preview and prediction video, which I'll probably post tomorrow or Friday. So do check that out as well if you are interested in the women's draw. During the tournament itself, I will be bringing out lots of different videos, so do subscribe to make sure you don't miss those, as I will be covering the tournament fully on this YouTube channel. So Wimbledon this year, it starts on Monday, I think it's the 20th of June, finishes on the 11th of July, the men's final. It'll be 2 fantastic weeks of tennis. And I do think Wimbledon's very, very interesting this year, particularly on the men's side of the tournament. We haven't had any grass court tennis since the summer of 2019. The next gen and the other younger players have little experience on grass, which does give an advantage to those that do, the likes of Djokovic and Federer and Murray and Cilic and Anderson. However, I do feel like it's unfair to really analyse the performances and the results of the likes of Medvedev and Tsitsipas and Zverev on grass, because they're much better players now than what they were in 2019. They've got a lot more experience. Zverev's been to a Grand Slam final, as has Tsitsipas. Medvedev's been to Grand Slam finals. So it's very difficult to analyse their performances and the results on grass in 2019 and before that, because they're so much better players now than what they were at that time. This year, obviously, we don't get Rafa Nadal, who pulled out last week due to a fitness issue. I think he's just struggling physically after a demanding first half of 2021, so he's taken time out of Wimbledon and the Olympics to focus on the US Open preparations. Disappointing not to see Rafa. Grand Slams aren't quite the same without Rafa. We all know how fantastic of a tennis player he is and competitor. Brilliant to watch, interacts with the fans, and yeah, disappointing not to see Nadal. Obviously Martin Del Potro not there as well, still recovering from his knee surgery. I think Dominic Thiem's unlikely to take part. He suffered a wrist injury yesterday, but we have got Roger Federer back and Andy Murray, which is fantastic to see. So about Wimbledon, grass is typically low bounce, often unpredictable. I expect to see lots of serving and volleying in the next couple of weeks. The big servers do well traditionally at Wimbledon. In the last few years we've had Raonic and Kevin Anderson meet and reach finals at Wimbledon. I do think the grass courts have slowed down over the years, but it's a difficult surface to adapt to. Very low bounces, as I say, and inconsistent at times. I think it's hard for younger players to adapt to grass when they play so much tennis in the hard courts and clay. Their seasons go on a lot longer than the grass courts do, so you don't get much time to practice on many warm-up events, which does make it difficult. I think the more experienced players who've been there and done it and have played lots of competitive matches on grass, like Federer and Djokovic, will have an advantage going into the tournament. So now I'm just going to run through, the major contenders and, give my predictions on who I think will win the event. Kicking off with the world number one, Novak Djokovic, who is a 5-time champion at Wimbledon, defending champion as well after beating Federer in that epic 2019 final, recovering from 2 championship points to win 13-12 in the decider, one of the greatest ever Grand Slam finals. So if, 2021 final has anything to go by, then, even if it's half as good as that 2019 final, they've been for a special one. Djokovic is chasing the Golden Slam after winning the Australian Open and French Open. He's without doubt the man to beat. I don't think anyone can argue that. Djokovic at the minute just ticks every single box. He's serving incredibly well. He's got every shot in the boot which you need, an all-round game to win a Wimbledon title. He's a monster from the baseline. He's got experience. He's in winning form. Just arrives in Wimbledon having won the French Open. He's chasing to win every record and become the best player to ever play the sport. And even the next gen, I think the next gen are closing the gap to Nadal and Federer, because I do think they're slightly decreasing, and I think they're struggling at the back end of tournaments physically. Whereas Djokovic, I think the gap's as big as ever. He's beaten Medvedev and Tsitsipas his last 2 Grand Slam finals. yes, Tsitsipas did give him a fantastic match and led 2 sets to love, but Djokovic, the way he played the back end of that match and his tennis in the big moments from the third set onwards was pretty special, and he's still a class above Tsitsipas. Defeated Medvedev obviously in straight sets in Melbourne in January in the final there. So I still think the gap's as big as ever from Djokovic to the next gen. So he does have to go out in this tournament as a huge favourite. I think one potential problem for Djokovic is fatigue. He did have a long tournament at Australian Open with the injury that he got. He went 5 sets with Taylor Fritz. He had a tough semi-final, and then he's went on to the French Open. He's beat Rafa Nadal there. He's played 5 sets with Musetti, 5 sets with Tsitsipas, and although Djokovic at the peak of his powers is an incredible athlete, and his fitness levels and recovery levels are fantastic, he is 34 years old, and whether he can produce his best at another Grand Slam after only having 2 weeks off will remain to be seen. But I think that's probably Djokovic's biggest enemy, the fitness issue. If he does get dragged into long battles, will he be able to find reserves, and will he be able to produce his best in the biggest moments? Will remain to be seen. But I think if Djokovic is 90 to 100% fit, then he's definitely the man to beat in this tournament. His form so far this year has just been incredible. He almost looks unbeatable over 5 sets. It's going to take a special performance or a huge drop from Djokovic if he is to lose, I think, at Wimbledon. Moving on now to Stefanos Tsitsipas, who he's got a record of 17-11 on grass, which might not sound the best, but as I say, he hasn't played on grass since 2019, and I do think Tsitsipas has really transformed his game, particularly over the last 18 months, become a lot better player all round, making less unforced errors, timing his attacks better. I think he used to be too rash, he used to chase winners, almost play a highlight reel shot every rally. But he's calmed that down a lot. I think he's serving a lot better, and as I said, just a lot more consistent. He's cut the errors out of his game. He's still a wonderful player to watch. He's got an outrageously good backhand, and I think the Wimbledon crowd is the best tennis crowd in the world. They appreciate entertainment. They appreciate wonderful tennis, and I think the crowd will very much like and get on with Tsitsipas. He's a brilliant person on and off court, and I think Tsitsipas could light up Wimbledon and become a superstar. Maybe not this year, but certainly over the years, I think the crowd will take a real liking to his style of play. He did reach the fourth round Wimbledon in 2019. One potential issue for Tsitsipas, he hasn't had a prep event due to that deep run at the French Open when he reached the final. But out of all the next-gen players, I think grass will probably suit Tsitsipas's game the most. He's a very aggressive player. He's excellent at the net. He's got fantastic hands. Although he's a big guy, he covers the court so well. His movement's brilliant, great anticipation, and his volleying and drop shotting around the net is up there with the best in the world. I think that's probably the best part of his game. Attacking the net with conviction and really executing the points very, very well. Tsitsipas as well, he's very good now defensively, particularly from the backhand side. He's got great variation in the backhand, with the cross court or down the line. The slice is just about good also to pass. I think the defensive part of his game and the movement, the counter punching has really improved over the years, and I think Wimbledon will definitely suit him. He obviously lost the French Open final to Djokovic, like I mentioned, but I'm sure he'll learn a lot from that experience. He played very, very well throughout the tournament. He did lead 2 sets to love, so I expect him to make a big run. I think Tsitsipas will have a very, very good tournament. Be interesting to see the draw, whether he faces Djokovic before the final. Projected, but yeah, Tsitsipas is a player that I'm a huge, huge fan of, and as I say, at Wimbledon, I think the crowd will take a real liking to his style. He's a box office player. He's one of the best in the world to watch, and I'm expecting a big run from Stefanos Tsitsipas this year's Wimbledon. So moving on now to Daniil Medvedev, who will be ranked number 2 for this event. He has got a record of 30-17 on grass. Again, not the most fantastic record. He does have a little bit more experience and more matches than Tsitsipas on a grass court. The first he's got so far at Wimbledon is the third round. And this might be a big shout, but I could see an early exit for Daniil Medvedev. I think he's a player that's just really suited to hard courts, and I'm not sure that clay or grass will ever really suit Medvedev. Medvedev's a player that really likes to counter punch. He likes to camp behind the baseline, redirect pace. He loves defending. Wimbledon, I think you need to be aggressive. You need to back the serve up with aggression. You need to look to hit winners, attack the net. That's just not Medvedev's style. I understand he can adapt. You can learn to adapt. At the French Open, I thought he'd done that very well. I was quite surprised by his results and his performances. So you may prove me wrong, but I've never really been convinced by Medvedev when he steps inside the baseline. I don't think he's great at the net. I don't think he's anything at the level of Tsitsipas or Djokovic or Federer around the net, and I couldn't see him beating one of those top players. Medvedev's a very, very tall guy, and defensively, he's arguably the best in the world. The way he counter-punched at the Australian Open is frighteningly good at times, and he's an outstanding tennis player. But I just think to be successful at Wimbledon, you have to be aggressive. You have to come in and hit winners and take risks, and I'm just not sure Medvedev has that game style. He's a little bit passive, I think, at times, a little bit too defensive and cautious, and that will get you found out at Wimbledon. But on a hard court, Medvedev up there with the best players in the world. On a grass court, not so sure, but as I say, he hasn't played on grass in 2019. He might change his tactics, completely adapt and change up his style, executed well, and he might make a major run. But for me, I could see Medvedev flopping and exiting Wimbledon early doors. Moving on to Sasha Zverev, who reached the fourth round of Wimbledon at 2017. Must have been a teenager now. Actually, looking at that, he must have been 17, 18 at the time. So a great performance from him that year. Tsitsipas has got a rocket first serve. A very consistent double-handed backhand. He's a great volleyer, but I still just think the forehand and the second serve still cost him against the top players. He cruised through to the semi-final at the French Open before facing Tsitsipas, and although he did fight back to take the match for a fifth set, the first two sets he just wasn't there, and there's something about Zverev that I'm just not quite convinced yet that he's good enough to beat the top players at the top level. He doesn't seem to quite produce his best at the big moments. He doesn't seem to have the same energy as the top guys in those semi-finals and finals. And although he's a wonderfully gifted player, as I say, his forehand just seems to break down too often for me. And the second serve, the double fault is still a huge issue for him. And if you gift games to the top players, then you get punished, and that's what happened to him so far in his career. I think the crowd again will like Zverev's style. He served very well at the French Open, which is so important at Wimbledon. But I just couldn't see him beating a Djokovic or a Tsitsipas in the current form. I'm not sure he's got that mentality and just a solid enough all-round game to beat those top players. But as I say, he's got huge talent, and if you could cut out the errors in the forehand and be a little bit more consistent on the second serve, if he was to reach a semi-final or final, then perhaps he could get over the line. But I certainly wouldn't be tipping Zverev to win this title personally. Moving on now to a man that is probably going into this tournament as in form as anybody other than Djokovic, and that's Matteo Berrettini. Recently won Queens, where he served and played fantastically well throughout. He's reached the quarter-final of all 4 Grand Slams, which not many players can say. I think he's probably the third favourite to win this tournament behind Djokovic and Federer. He's just got ridiculous power. If you haven't seen Matteo Berrettini play before, do make sure you watch one of his matches next week. He's got probably the hardest hitting forehand I've ever seen, other than maybe Del Potro. He hits the markings off the ball almost. As I say, won Queens with some fantastic performances, beating Cam Norrie in the final. He's a very likeable guy. He's improving all the time. I still feel with Berrettini that he is sometimes erratic and he does gift games away. But he is maturing. He's learning still. He's still a young guy. If he gets rolling, then he will be very difficult to stop, because again, his game should be suited to grass courts. He's got a massive first serve. He loves to be aggressive and come inside the court. And if he backs the first serve with a forehand, then it's not coming back, whoever he's facing. So I think Berrettini's just about execution. The pressure's sort of on him a bit now after he's won Queens, so it'll be interesting to see how he deals with that, because he's never really been a favourite to make a major run at a Grand Slam. He's often been overlooked. But now he's won Queens and he's in form player, then he will be feeding the draw, so it'll be interesting to see how he copes with that favourite tag in majority of the matches that he'll be playing. How can I forget, Roger Federer? He looked very, very good at the French Open, but it was disappointing in Halle in his defeat to Felix Auger-Aliassime. He'll have the support of the crowd. He's got experience of, winning Wimbledon many, many times and playing hundreds and hundreds of matches on grass. And this was always the aim. The aim at the start of the year when Federer was training and prepping his events and schedule was to win Wimbledon. And he even pulled out the French Open because he wanted to peak at Wimbledon, which shows you just how seriously he's taking this tournament. And a fully fit Roger Federer with the belief that he can win is dangerous. He reached the final of this tournament in 2019, had 2 championship points on serve before Djokovic came back. The claims to back of Roger Federer, obvious. He's won 20 Grand Slams, he's won Wimbledon, was it 8 times? As I say, he'll have the support of the crowd, he's looking to peak at this event. I could see him making a big, big run, draw dependent, but I just can't see him winning this tournament. I think he's just been out for too long. I know he looked good at the French Open, but that's when he was fresh. And I think, at the business end of the tournament, when he gets drugged 4 and 5 hours, can he continue to produce his best? Will he be able to recover in 1 or 2 days for another big match against another top player? I'm not so sure. I just don't think his body will allow him to play his best tennis if he was to reach the late stage of the tournament. The next gen players now and the other young players, the likes of Nishikori and Milos Raonic will be. Milos Raonic's actually out the draw, sorry. But all the other players in the draw that reach the 4th round and quarterfinals are very, very good now. They're very consistent. The fitness levels are incredible, and I just think they could outlast Federer. But you can never rate Roger Federer off. When he's on a good serving day and he's got that wonderful backhand flow and he's attacking the net, he's being aggressive, he's got the centre court crowd behind him, then of course he's going to be a huge danger. And yeah, I think Roger could make a huge, huge run at Wimbledon. I don't think he'll win the tournament, but I could certainly see him reaching the semi-final stages for sure. Other notable players in the draw, Nick Kyrgios, massive server, box office, love him or hate him, he's a very, very good tennis player and certainly want to watch next week. Kevin Anderson as well reached the final against Djokovic a couple of years back. Marin Cilic has got lots of experience at Wimbledon. I think the big servers will do well this year at Wimbledon. And from a British point of view, we have Andy Murray back, which is, fantastic to see. Don't think there's any real pressure on Andy. I don't think there's much expectations there. We've seen him beat Benoit Paire at Queens and then lose to Matteo Berrettini, the eventual champion, which is, no shame in that defeat with the way Berrettini is currently playing. Whether Murray can continue to play his best tennis over 5 sets, I'm not so sure. He's like Federer, he's been out a long, long time. Hasn't had too much preparation for this tournament, but let's just hope Andy's fitting well, gets a match on centre court, and if it is his last Wimbledon, then at least he's been able to bow out in front of fans. And what a career he's had! 2 Olympic goals, world #1, 3 Grand Slams, 2 Wimbledon titles, and Andy Murray deserves immense credit to even be at this tournament. When you watch what he's been through and you listen to him speak about the injury, and he just loves playing tennis, and it was always his dream to play tennis professionally, and he's not ready to let go of that yet. And I think that's admirable in itself, the work that he's put in to get to this point. So just to see Andy play at Wimbledon is going to be fantastic to see. If he can get a couple of wins and make a run at this tournament, then even better. But I have high hopes for British hopes. Cam Norrie's been playing some outrageously good tennis this year, probably the best year of his career so far. Reached the final at Queens last week, which should give him huge confidence. Dan Evans as well, having a very good 2021 after a brilliant 2020, inside the top 30 now in the world, which is brilliant to see, the British #1. So I think Norrie and Evans, they've got more experience on grass courts than majority of the players in this draw, being British and growing up on grass courts. So yeah, I think Norrie and Evans could quite easily make the last 16 quarterfinals. If they can go any further, fantastic. But hopefully them 3 players go well. So thank you for watching that preview video. That was a long one, but a little bit longer than I expected. In terms of who will win the tournament, you have to just go with Novak Djokovic. The world #1, in form, chasing all the titles, best player in the world at the moment, undisputed. And unless fatigue issues or a performance of a lifetime for somebody else come up, then I think Djokovic will win the tournament. As far as the second favourite goes, I think you have to go Roger Federer. And I think Matteo Berrettini is certainly one to watch in the draw. I think he could rocket past most players. If he can reach the semi-final, quarter-final stages unscathed, then his serve and forehand could quite easily win him this title, especially if Djokovic was to drop out. So I think Berrettini is probably the outside pick for me. I will be bringing out a full women's preview video, probably on the channel tomorrow or Friday. And as I say, I will be covering the tournament fully on YouTube next week. So if you are interested in following Wimbledon on my YouTube channel, then do subscribe. If you have any thoughts on the tournament yourself, do comment in the comment section below. I do appreciate that and enjoy talking about tennis with you all. Please leave a like in the video and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one.